Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today, we're tackling the timing belt on the Astra, and this should be similar to an engine in a Cruiser or a Sonic with the 1.8 liter. And one of the big things you want to do, especially if you don't have any types of books to tell you what you need to be doing, is to try and mark things. So using like a simple paint marker, you just want to mark out simple lines and witness points that you can go back to. So right now I've got the cams marked, and you can kind of see how they line up. So I just marked the outside of the wheel, the tooth, and where it should land on the black plastic back there. Same thing with this one. So front part of the wheel on the tooth itself, that's running a little bit on the black plastic, but I know it needs to be at the top. Then down at the crank, I can see that there is a mark down here, plus that little arrow at the bottom. So I've got that pretty close, but you can see it's not quite 100% lined up, but it's close enough, it's holding it in place at the moment. So whenever I get everything back together, what we'll do is we'll make sure that everything lines right back up. If you've never done a time belt before, they're basically pretty simple. All it is just a belt that runs from the crank up to the cams and controls the timing. So normally you've got an idler that'll re-angle things as they need to go, and then a tensioner that maintains tension to keep everything nice and tight. As the belt wears, it'll pull any additional stretch out of it and help keep everything in time. Now, on this particular engine, it's pretty simple. Right down here, there's a 6mm hex bolt, or hex hole. So you can take basically just an Allen key, that's 6mm, slip it in, and you should be able to just apply pressure on this and we'll get it to relax. So you can see it rolled out of the way and relieved pressure. So it loosens up the belt up here. So you put the Allen at about here, you can swing it even farther, really get some good movement out of it, and probably slip it off this idler pulley down here with your other hand. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. All right, and then you can see, as soon as I did that, things moved. So that's exactly why when you go to put things back together, you want to realign those marks. Once the belt's off, you want to go ahead and remove the tensioner and probably the pulley, if those came in your kit. They didn't mind. And it's better to replace them now than have one fail in like 30,000 miles and then have to do this job all over again. And then these are just held in with a T50 Torx. And then if you look down where the tensioner goes, there's that little relief there for the finger. The back of the tensioner spring goes right in that hole. And the bolt had just a little bit of blue Loctite on it when I took it out. So it's getting a little bit of blue Loctite going in. All right, so I've got the belt kind of put back on. It's on down at the crank. It's up over the idler. It's over this cam. This is close to where it needs to be. This one's nowhere near where it needs to be. So I couldn't adjust the cam, so this particular cam that the socket's in, without it moving everything with that just loose. So you really have to have the belt off of one of the pulleys in order to actually get this loose and in order to readjust the cams. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to tighten up this one back to where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to back it up just a touch. This one I'm going to leave about a tooth off because the gap that you see right here is about a tooth's worth of gap. So we should be pretty good with that once I get everything all situated. I just need one more hand to hold the camera. As you can see, the two cams are on pretty close. The problem is the crank is off by about one tooth. So I just gotta pop the belt back off one more time, try and pull one tooth over and one tooth over on both cams. So I need the belt to move one tooth over, or the cam to move one tooth that way. So belt moves one tooth over, or cam moves one tooth that way. And this is actually another easy moment for the paint pen, because what you can do is just mark the belt a little, for the part of the belt that goes into the groove, and then mark the cam for the groove that you want it to go into. This side is going to be a little bit more complicated, but I should be able to use the alignment here to make sure that this side moved it's just one tooth. That one's now lined up. This one's now lined up. That's exactly where I wanted the belt to be. And the crank's where it's supposed to be as well. So now what I'll do is I'll rotate this over and make sure the lines line back up after it's gone around twice. And the nice thing about marking these yourself is you don't have to worry about anything weird. So sometimes when the factory marks things, the markings can be misaligned when they were installed. So if somebody put a cam sprocket on upside down at the factory, you'd have no idea. And if all you did was just open this up and go, okay, cool, yank the belt, and then line everything back up later, if you didn't verify first that everything was lined up the way it was supposed to be, you could be really screwed. And the first dealership that I worked at, that's exactly what happened to a gentleman that was working on Nissan Altima. One guy started it and then went on vacation. So the next guy was supposed to finish it up. When that guy lined the timing marks up, the other guy didn't make any additional marks, any extra witness marks to make sure everything was perfectly correct. And what wound up happening was one of the cam gears was actually misaligned from the factory or installed improperly. And it wound up not running right. And it took months for them to finally figure out, when I said, hey, did anybody try degreeing the cam, that maybe it was misaligned. Once they degreed the cam and figured out that it was off, they got the engine running and we're good to go. All right. So, been twice around. Cam gears are lined up. Crank. You can just see that little bit of the white there. So the crank's all lined up. We should be good to go. So, if you want to try and tackle this job, I would definitely recommend marking everything first, because there isn't a lot of good marks up here. And even if there was a factory system of maybe like trying to line up bolts, so maybe you go, okay, this makes a straight line, that's still not 100% perfect. You still almost need something where it's going to mark that little bit there, because if this was one tooth off, that little bit of a straight line, as much as this isn't quite perfectly straight, it'd be just enough to throw you off. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll check you next time. Boy, this old one doesn't even feel like rubber anymore. It's definitely stiff. Whoop. Is it cracked a little? Good thing I replaced this.